Have you ever felt like there's a part of you that shows up just to ruin things right when you're about to succeed, right when you're starting to feel loved, right when things finally seem safe? Something inside you panics, sabotages, and disappears. You tell yourself you're weak, broken, messed up. But what if I told you you're not broken at all? What if what's breaking everything is actually trying to protect you? There's a part of you you've left behind, a part you learned to silence just to survive, and now it screams the only way it knows how, by pushing love away, by quitting before it begins, by making sure nothing ever lasts. It's not because you're bad, it's because you're scared, and the scariest thing is to finally stay. There's something I discovered, and it changed everything, not just for me, but for every version of me that ever thought I was the problem. So if you're still here, thank you, and I hope you'll stay just a little longer. It was raining that night. The kind of rain that feels like it's trying to scrub something off the world. David sat in his parked car outside her apartment, engine off, hands trembling. He had just ended it, or maybe he had let it end itself. Like always, she had said, "You're pulling away." He had said nothing, not because he didn't love her, but because something inside him screamed that staying would break him. This wasn't the first time, not the first love, not the first goodbye, but this time David didn't just feel sad, he felt empty, like he had followed a script he didn't remember writing, a pattern etched so deep it moved faster than thought. He looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror. Who are you? Why do you keep doing this? Behind his eyes there wasn't a monster, just confusion, and a flicker of something older, something deeper. Portland was quiet that week, gray skies, coffee shops whispering with steam and silence. David worked remotely. He smiled in meetings. He answered emails. But inside, he couldn't let go of that moment, of how quickly his hands had let go of hers. He had read books, gone to therapy, meditated, tried to be better. And yet here he was, alone again, not by accident but by reflex. A part of him had always known how to leave, but never how to stay. Maybe this time he would ask why, not why she left. Not why it ended, but why he keeps ending things, why he builds beautiful beginnings, only to tear them down when they feel too real. There's something quietly terrifying about realizing the common denominator is you, and yet, in that same terrifying truth, there's a door, and if you're willing, that door might open, not to answers, but to the version of you who's been waiting all along. It always starts the same. A new opportunity, a new face, a new beginning. Hope swells, things feel light. Maybe this time will be different. David had just started a new job last year, project lead at a creative agency. His team liked him. His manager called him a rising star. He felt seen for the first time in years. And then emails unanswered, deadlines missed, avoidance dressed up as busyness. He told himself it was burnout, that it would pass, but deep down, he knew the pattern. Months before that, he joined a running club, met people who actually wanted to know him. He laughed, he belonged, until the texts started going unread. Events skipped, excuses stacked like bricks, and then silence. Again, David kept thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I hold on to anything good? But what he didn't realize was that these weren't failures, they were reflexes, the kind you don't choose, the kind that choose you. At dinner once, his friend Lily said, "You always vanish when things get real." He smiled, like it was a joke, but it wasn't. It was a map, a mirror, a breadcrumb trail back to something older, something buried. Some nights, David would stare at the ceiling, replaying moments when joy turned to panic. The client that praised him, he avoided the next meeting. The partner who said, "I love you." He froze, then pushed them away. Joy, love, belonging. These weren't goals, they were triggers, and that's when he started wondering, what if sabotage isn't the enemy? What if it's a signal? What if it's not the part of you that ruins everything, but the part that remembers everything? The pain, the rejection, the moment the world told you You're too much or not enough or both if you've ever felt that way, if you've ever ghosted your own happiness. You're not alone and you're not broken, you're reacting. From a place that once saved you, but maybe now. It's time to ask, does it still need to? Carl Jung once said, the shadow is not a defect, it is the unconscious itself. David didn't know that, not at first. He thought the part of him that ruined things was a flaw, a weakness, a crack in the glass of who he was supposed to be, but the truth, that part, was the shadow, not some dark monster, not an evil twin, but the collection of everything he had to hide, to be accepted, to be safe. The tears, he was told, were too sensitive. The anger, he was told, was too much. The needs, he was told, were selfish. All of it folded away, packed into a corner of his psyche and forgotten. But the psyche doesn't forget, it remembers, and what is not expressed is acted out in quiet sabotage, in sudden rage, in the slow bleed of isolation. David began to understand. The shadow is not trying to destroy you, it's trying to be seen. But it doesn't speak with words, it speaks with withdrawal, with panic, with resistance to joy. Because somewhere deep inside, a part of him believes joy is dangerous. And why wouldn't it? Joy led to loss, love led to rejection, vulnerability led to shame. So the shadow steps in, not to hurt, but to protect. It whispers, if you leave now, you won't get hurt. If you fail first, they can't abandon you. If you hide, you'll be safe. It's not irrational, it's loyal to the child who first learned that being seen was not safe. And so it repeats every job, every friendship, every time someone gets close. Not because you're weak, but because a part of you still believes. Safety is in the silence, power is in disappearance, control is in walking away. David started to wonder what would happen if he stopped fighting the shadow. What if he asked, "What are you trying to protect?" And what if he listened? It started in the hallway. David was 7. He had just drawn a picture, crayons on scrap paper, of his family. He ran to show his dad, grinning, proud, but his father barely looked. He was on the phone. And when David tugged his sleeve, his dad snapped, "Stop being so needy, go entertain yourself." The smile died on David's face. He didn't cry, not then. But something in him folded, like paper. Quietly, permanently, that night he sat on the floor by his bed. Holding the drawing, he stared at the crumpled edges and whispered to himself, "Don't be too much." Years later, he wouldn't remember the drawing, not consciously, but every time someone got close, every time he wanted to be seen, something clenched inside him, a voice, soft, sharp. "Careful, don't ask for too much. Don't be a burden. Don't ruin the moment." That hallway moment became a blueprint of silence, of shrinking, of becoming invisible just enough to be acceptable. In therapy, decades later, David was asked, "What's the first memory of being told you were too much?" That question. It opened a door he didn't know existed, and behind it, sadness, anger, grief, but also relief, because for the first time, he could name the moment, the origin of the echo, and suddenly the pattern made sense. He wasn't broken, he was loyal to a rule he learned too early, a rule that said being seen equals pain, asking equals rejection, needing equals weakness. So he trained himself to want less, to need nothing, to disappear, just enough. But healing begins with memory, with going back, not to relive, but to reclaim. David sat in silence that night, no music, no phone, just him. And that little boy in the hallway, still holding the drawing, still hoping someone would look and say, "You're not too much, you never were." Sabotage feels sudden, but it's not. It's a system, an old one built from memories, not logic. David learned to see it like a smoke alarm. It doesn't care if there's real fire, only that something feels like danger, joy, love, success. They all look like smoke to a nervous system trained in loss. So when he finally felt seen, his body panicked, not because he didn't want it, but because he'd been trained to expect the crash. So his shadow acted, skip the meeting, ignore the call, end it first, not to destroy, But to survive, it's not sabotage, it's safety. A misguided, painful, brilliant kind of safety, because once, long ago, David felt joy. And it was taken away. He was open and was shamed for it, so his shadow made a deal. I'll keep us safe. I'm making sure this never happens again. That deal became a code. If you get close, leave. If it gets good, ruin it. If they love you, doubt it, because then you control the pain, you own the ending, you make sure no one else does. It sounds tragic. And it is, but it's also incredibly human. We don't sabotage because we're reckless. We sabotage because we're loyal to the parts of us that once held the pain. It's a loyalty that says, I'll never let you feel that again. I'll protect you, even from joy, especially from joy. Because joy means soft, soft means vulnerable, and vulnerable used to mean destroyed. But here's the question, what if that's no longer true? What if the systems we built to survive are now the very things keeping us from living? David looked at his own life like a map, each burned bridge, each undone dream, not random, not failure, but proof of how deeply he loved the younger version of himself, so deeply. He'd rather destroy the future than ever feel that pain again, even once. But maybe it's time to update the alarm, to ask, is this still danger? Or is this possibility? And if it's possibility, what happens when you stop running and start listening? It started with a mirror, not the kind you hang on a wall, but the kind you find. When you stop pretending, David had a moment, quiet, simple, standing in his kitchen, brushing crumbs into his hand, when he suddenly asked aloud, why do I hate myself when I disappoint people? The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was heavy, like the room had heard him, like something inside him had been waiting. He sat at his table, took out a notebook, and wrote at the top of the page, to the part of me that ruins things. What are you trying to say? No answer came, not in words, but his chest tightened, his breath shortened. And that was enough. He kept writing letters, not to others, but to himself, to the rage, to the shame, to the boy who was told he was too much. Each letter began the same way, I see you now, and ended the same way, you were never the enemy. Day by day, David began to witness his own patterns like an archaeologist, curious, gentle, without judgment. Instead of saying, I always ruin everything, he asked, who inside me feels unsafe right now? Whose voice am I hearing? Is this mine? Or something I inherited? The more he listened, the less noise there was, not because the fear vanished, but because fear, when heard, softens. One night he looked at an old photo, him at age 10, holding a soccer trophy, beaming, and he said to that picture, you deserve to be proud, without earning it. And something inside shifted. David no longer needed to fight the parts of him he once rejected. He just needed to let them speak. He realized the enemy was never the shadow, it was the silence between them. And healing is conversation, not victory, not conquest, just the quiet corrigido ask, what do you need from me now? And to mean it. David never imagined he'd be writing love letters to his anger, but that's exactly what he did. One morning, after a sleepless night, he sat with his journal and wrote, to my rage, I always feared you. You showed up loud, explosive, uncontrollable. You ruined dinners. You ended friendships. You made me ashamed. But today, I want to know you. Where did you come from and why do you still live here? He waited. There was no answer, just the warmth in his cheeks, a flicker in his chest, tears not from sadness, but recognition. He kept writing. To my shame, you made me small, you wrapped my shoulders forward, you stole my voice. But maybe you were just trying to keep me safe. If I stayed small, I wouldn't be attacked. If I stayed quiet, I wouldn't be mocked. The words spilled like a confession. To my fear, you kept me from so much, parties, opportunities, love, but you also kept me alive. You knew how to scan a room, how to sense the shift in tone, how to leave before the slam of a door. You learned that early, didn't you? David sat back, tears on his face, not from pain, but from awe, because these parts, The ones he had hated, buried, cursed, they weren't monsters, they were guardians, warriors shaped in the furnace of childhood, and all they ever wanted was to be acknowledged, not fixed, not silenced, just heard. So David kept writing every morning, a new letter. Some short, some long, each one like a reunion. Between who he was and who he tried not to be, one day he wrote, "To the version of me that hides in the back of the room, you can come forward now, you're safe here. You don't need to earn your place, you already belong." And in that moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, wholeness. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that hums softly. In the bones, a quiet knowing that every part of him, even the hardest to love, was worthy of coming home. The apartment was quiet, no music, no podcast, just the hum of the fridge and David's breath. He sat cross-legged on the floor, no agenda, no goal, just presence. At first the silence felt awkward, like a stranger sitting across from him, but slowly it softened. He closed his eyes, and in that darkness he didn't search, he didn't dig, he waited. Images came, old memories, flickering like film. A birthday party where he didn't speak. A high school hallway filled with laughter that wasn't his. A late-night text left on read, and beneath them, a sensation, tightness in his throat. A heaviness behind the eyes, not overwhelming, just there. David didn't push it away. He greeted it like you would greet a friend who'd been gone a long time. He whispered, "It's okay, you can stay." That was it. No breakthrough, no vision, just a man sitting with his ghosts without fear. And in that stillness, something rare happened. The parts of him that used to shout grew quiet, not because they were silenced, but because they were finally heard. There is power in doing nothing, in not fixing, in not performing, just being. The child who once had to stay small was now allowed to breathe. The teenager who shut down in confusion was now invited to exist without answers. The man who always ran was now still. And the silence, it no longer felt empty, it felt full of memories, of stories, of truths he had been too busy to feel. He realized healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it sits, listens, and waits, like the body when given rest knows how to mend. David opened his eyes, no rush, no revelation, but he felt whole, not fixed, whole, and that difference was everything. Integration isn't a destination, it's a relationship, not with others, but with yourself. David didn't wake up one morning healed. There was no parade, no gold star, just a shift, subtle but steady. He noticed it the day his friend canceled plans. Before, he would have spiraled, thought it meant rejection, proof that he was too much. Again, but this time he just said, "Totally understand, let's reschedule." And that was it. No shame storm, no emotional hangover, just peace. Because the part of him that used to panic now had company. It wasn't alone anymore. This is integration, not becoming someone else, but becoming someone whole, someone who no longer needs to exile their fear, or hide their joy, or silence their sadness. It's not perfection, it's permission. Permission to feel, to respond, to stay. One afternoon, David stood in his doorway, watching rain slide down the glass. He thought about all the times he'd fled, from intimacy, from opportunity, from himself. And now he was still. He didn't flinch when things got quiet, didn't sprint when emotions rose. He breathed, not because it was easy, but because now he trusted himself to survive it. That's what integration does. It rewrites the story, not by erasing the past, but by retelling it with compassion. The angry version of you deserved to be angry. The quiet version deserved to be heard. The one who disappeared deserved to feel safe. When all those selves are welcomed home, you stop needing to run. Because there's nowhere to escape when all of you is allowed to be here. David started doing small things differently, saying no, without guilt, saying yes, without fear, sitting in discomfort, without fleeing, and in that he found a kind of power that doesn't shout, that doesn't dominate, a power that whispers, "You can stay now, it's safe here." And in that whisper, a life began, not a new life, but the one he was always meant to live, the one built, not on protection, but presence. Wholeness doesn't come with applause, it comes quietly like sunlight, creeping through the blinds on a morning you didn't expect to survive. David walked into his favorite coffee shop, same barista, same order, but when they asked, "How are you today?" he didn't lie. He smiled, gently, and said, "I'm okay, actually okay." And he meant it because for the first time, his okay didn't depend on being perfect, on being needed or liked or impressive. His okay came from knowing could hold every part of himself without abandoning any. This is what wholeness feels like, not a high, not a finish line, but a homecoming. It's the moment you realize you no longer need willpower to not sabotage, because sabotage was never the root. Separation was trying to live without your fear, without your sadness, without your rage. That was the wound. But when you turn toward those parts, when you say, "Come in, you belong too," the war ends not with fireworks, but with softness, with stillness, with a man sitting in a quiet room, finally at peace with himself. And if you've been running, if you've built a life on pleasing, perfecting, disappearing, you don't need to do that anymore. You don't need to exile who you've been to become who you are. You just need to turn inward and listen. Because the parts of you that break things, they're not enemies, they're messengers asking, "Will you finally see me?" And when you do, everything changes, not because you fought harder, but because you stopped fighting at all. If something in you softened during this, if something inside whispered, "This is me," comment below. I'm ready to stop running. You are not alone, and this is just the beginning.